this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Ilya Malinin. Redefining the sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. The world is laid out before you. When you start talking about things like gap years, it's an exciting time for a college student or a student that is going to go into college to take that gap year. And sometimes you'll have gap years. Sometimes people will start college and then say after their sophomore year, I'm going to take a gap year and just travel. And look, I got no problem with that, man. You know, it's like you get family, you get kids. Those days are gone. They're gone. My wife and I have come to travel later in our lives, and we do love travel. We do. We've been to Great Britain several times, and matter of fact, we visited the area where our subject of today's episode originated from, Essex. But there's one place that I've always wanted to go, and that's New Zealand. And today we're going to talk about a case that so captured the imagination of a country who is not used to violent crime. This is one of those moments in times where this event so shocked the conscience of a country that you could not peel them away from the news. They wanted, I think, to try to understand it, because some things, particularly in those areas that we discuss, there's really no answers most of the time. Why goes out the door. Today, we're going to talk about the homicide of Grace Millane. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. Dave, it's hard to take the measure of this crime that took place in New Zealand back in 2018. Now, it's resonated over all of these years because of the level of brutality. And I think this stranger on stranger event where you've got this young, innocent lady who is literally taking a gap year and traveling around the world.
I say, you mentioned that, Grace Millane was taking that gap year, and gap years can be applied to after high school or after college.
Yeah.
Either way you look at it. Oftentimes a gap year after high school ends up being a gap career, but a gap year after college can open your eyes to the rest of the world, because a college atmosphere can be so liberal or just one way. And you get away for a year and realize what reality is like. And Grace Millane was doing that. She had this gap year and she had a plan, and she ended up going to New Zealand, and she was camping and doing the things she wanted to do. But Grace Millane was also looking at the world and living it, using the dating app Tinder. And it was through the dating app Tinder that she met Jesse Kempson. Jesse Kempson used Tinder before, during, and after Grace Millane. The reason we're doing the show about 21-year-old Grace Millane's murder by Jesse Kempson is I want to point something out to you, that while she's dead, he's killed her, and her body is still in his hotel room. He went out on another Tinder date. That is Jesse Kempson in a nutshell. So that's the story today. A woman who has gone through college, has taken a year to go see the world, and she's living that dream and gets snuffed out by a guy she meets on Tinder. And by the way, we have CCTV footage of their date. Did you know that, Joe?
Oh, yeah.
We have a timeline of the night they met, the night they got together. We have pictures from 5:45 that evening of a very alive and thriving Grace Millane as she arrives in the front of this casino. 20-foot tall Christmas tree. It's such a thing. She actually stood there waiting for her date, her Tinder date, Jesse Kempson. And she is so enamored with the tree, she takes a picture and sends it to her family in Essex. He arrives, Jesse does. They hug and proceed to go on their date. 6 o'clock. The two of them are walking into a casino. They find Andy's Burger Bar. I wonder if this is kind of like if Andy's Burger Bar is similar to Demolition Man, where everything was named Taco Bell. Right. Yeah. That's what I picture Andy's Burger Bar being, because they actually go in there and order drinks, find a table, and are chilling out on their date. 7:12. Right. They're seen leaving the Burger Bar, going across the road to a Mexican cafe. They spend the next hour until Kempson comes to pay the bill, with her standing right beside him. And 8:27. The pair is filmed from a distance now, but you can see them crossing Albert Street, and they head into the Bluestone room where Kempson had earlier been drinking beer alone. By this point in the evening, they kiss. This is a Tinder date. In her eyes, we're going really well. 9:41 p.m. CCTV shows Grace Millane and Jesse Kempson entering the hotel where Kempson is living at the time. They enter the elevator and they head to Kempson's room, what they call an apartment. That's the last time we see Grace Millane alive. We know that she is brutally murdered, possibly, Joe, in the early morning hours of December 2nd. By the way, that's her birthday. Grace Millane might have been killed, brutally murdered, on her 22nd birthday.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that really, I think, struck home with the family, was that it was, I might get the number wrong, but I think it was like 26 or 27 different birthday wishes text that had seemingly gone ignored. And, relative to, the family thinking about this.
We've got a girl so attached to her mom, she takes a picture of the Christmas tree and sends it to her.
Yeah, and I think that at some point in time she had sent a text talking about how well things were going, that she felt like she had a connection with this guy. And I still don't, I don't understand how you can have a connection with somebody in this short a period of time. Maybe they had been talking on Tinder. Maybe that was already, that had already kind of been brought about, the seeds that had been planted. And you feel kind of this kind of connection with someone. So you're predisposed to it.
I have a friend who got married on a first date.
Wow.
They met.
Yeah, I avoided that trap.
They met and hooked up and went, wow, you're the person I've been waiting for. They each said it to one. Yeah. And they got married. I mean, we're talking, didn't know you before the sun came up yesterday. You are now my spouse for life, before the sun comes up again. And they're still together 30 years later.
Holy smokes. Well, wow, good for them.
Yeah.
I have to imagine that's got to be kind of a rarity.
Yeah, I got a feeling that's not the norm.
Yeah, it wouldn't, that wouldn't fly with me. It took me, I don't know, with Kim, that I think it took us 8 months, but still, and by some measure, that's pretty quick. But wow. And so I don't see how someone can connect that quickly and let's face it, get this intimate. Yeah, because we're talking a level of intimacy here that, and there's two types of intimacy. You have intimacy from an emotional standpoint, where you're sharing with one another and talking, and maybe you find a common ground. But then you have sexual intimacy. Now, whether or not Grace was interested in a sexual encounter with him. I don't know. But I do know that the level of brutality that is apparently involved or was involved in this case reached such a height that it's evidenced in the fact that in the wake of him having killed her, you had mentioned he went back on Tinder. In addition to that, he, as her remains are in the room, he's actually searching out, and he's oscillating between these two things. Just imagine this just for a second. He's thinking about ways to get rid of human remains. He even goes so far as to search out birds that will consume human flesh in New Zealand. What specific species exist? Oh, and by the way, he was also spicing things up with her cooling remains laying there on the floor of that hotel room. He was also viewing pornography at the same time.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Millane.
Redefining the sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Dave, I started out as a death investigator so young that this is why really young people do not need to be death investigators. You are not seasoned enough in the things of the world in order to appreciate the full scope and magnitude of what you're looking at, I think. And here's my example. I remember I couldn't have been any more than, I think, 24. And I worked what was ruled as a homicide by our office of a case involving sexual frenzy in the bedroom, where the two people that were engaging in sexual activity together were so ramped up, so sexually stimulated that rough sex came into play, and the individual that wound up being the perpetrator in this crime got so carried away that they were slapping this person around and choking them at the same time, and the person succumbed to asphyxia. And there was not a pattern of this behavior with multiple partners. It had been stated in this case that they had engaged in this behavior before. And I'm just talking about this from my perspective as a very young death investigator. I didn't know that sort of thing went on. You hear about these things with BDSM and all these sorts of things, but you don't until you actually see this person lying there on the bed. I'll never forget her laying there nude, and her head was just purple. It was purple because he had asphyxiated her with his bare hands. I couldn't really make sense of it because I'd had asphyxial homicides prior to that, but not with the sexual component. It was always like just out and out anger. I'm going to choke the life out of you, that sort of thing. It wasn't like a sexual practice. And it was the first time I'd seen that. And, with this particular case, you've got pathology going on between this individual's ears regarding these practices. I think that this is something that this individual was seeking out. And who better who better to target than this young woman who's traveling? One thing that I failed to mention earlier is that she had just arrived in New Zealand, having spent several weeks 6 weeks traveling about South America.
Yeah.
What a grand adventure, huh?
That's what I was saying.
When you think about it, this is like perfection. I would, and she was staying in hostels, all along the way, save money. I've stayed in hostels before in Great Britain.
She was making a lifelong trip, one that you tell your kid. It's the trip you tell your family about.
Oh, absolutely.
6 weeks in South America just reminded when everything came about, and she goes to Auckland. You mentioned she just got there. I don't know what kind of a Tinder relationship they had in terms of, because I don't use Tinder. I'm married. These things didn't exist when,
right.
So this whole, I know what they are, but I don't know how people truly use them. It's kind of like, a lot of people claim a lot of things are available, but you just kind of look at it and go, yeah, right. Sure. Okay.
Right.
But there are people who do, casual sex or what have you. You meet somebody on Tinder, they look good, you go out, you get along. Hey, let's just go finish the evening off. Here we go. I mean, I'm not saying that's good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just saying it does happen. She spends 6 weeks in South America doing, whatever she wants to do. All I was thinking, because of the way it ended, isn't it odd that she picked South America, where after Joran Vandersloot did whatever he did with Natalie Holloway, he ends up going to South America. And what happens? He meets a girl in playing blackjack. He gets her to his hotel room. It's around the anniversary of Natalie Holloway's murder. And what happens? He kills her in the hotel room.
Yep. And
leaves her body in there and goes for coffee. I mean, I'm thinking how odd it is that she was. I'm thinking there are men, Joran Vandersloot, Robert Chambers, that actually exist to terrorize and torture women and claim it's sex.
Yeah. I mean, you could even go back to, what was it called? The it escapes me now. It's not Backpage. It's the murder. This guy had
Craigslist murder.
A Craigslist murderer. Yeah. And so there's been a template for this for some time.
Right.
And that's the scary thing about all of these, is that you don't know who's behind the veil is the problem. And you don't know what is waiting for you out there. And you're vulnerable. Boy, is she ever vulnerable, because, the perpetrator is a Kiwi. He's from New Zealand. This is his home country. Dude, she's come from South America.
Yeah.
She knows nobody. All right. She's there in this environment, having you can imagine the excitement, that she's experiencing upon.
I'm just enamored with her. I mean, woman, a young woman that has that kind of foresight and the guts, you have to really, really have confidence in life and in yourself to create this kind of opportunity to go and spend 6 weeks in South America and head to Auckland, New Zealand. Again, a lot of people talk about the dreams they have in life. She's doing them. She's 21 years old and she's living it.
Yeah. And I got to say something about my friends in Great Britain. They raise their children to do this. Actually, I'm amazed. My British friends that I encounter, how often they travel, outside of Great Britain as families. They'll go in holiday place. They'll go for Christmas in foreign lands. It's not something that we're used to doing in America. My son Noah, after we had taken him to Great Britain several times, he went over and went to Great Britain by himself for Christmas. And he stayed at the home of some friends that we had made outside of Liverpool. And he's just that kind of adventurous soul.
Do they call themselves Liverpudlians?
Yes, Liverpudlians, I believe is the correct term. But yeah, lovely people and very generous, very kind. But
I want to go to Liverpool and walk around and say, "Do you know John, Paul, George, or Ringo? Where did Pete live?"
It's a fantastic trip, and we certainly enjoyed it.
All right, so just so I can be clear on this, because I didn't know this, okay? And I'm going to assume a lot of folks don't. I didn't know this, but that this was kind of a thing that in Great Britain, parents encourage their children to do as young adults.
They do. We're so.
It's a great idea.
We're very sheltered here in the U.S. We're not. We don't do international travel like people that live abroad.
Right.
And
abroad to us.
Abroad to us. And
is it because their countries are so close to one another? Whereas you and I might travel between Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and what have you. Well, if you're in Europe, you're going from Germany to Poland to Austria. Right. France.
Yeah. Well, as an example, the same couple that came to celebrate their anniversary in New York, and their goal was to make it to Vegas. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to go to Vegas, and this was, I think, one of their first journeys to the U.S. They said, "Yeah, we got on the plane and headed to Vegas. We had no idea that." It was a long way from New York to Vegas. It took forever to get there because if you can fly out of Heathrow, right. And go. You can go to the Czech Republic or you can go to Switzerland, and you're there in the blink of an eye. It's
in a couple hours.
Yeah, and they're speaking a different language. It's not like that here.
No.
And so,
oh my gosh, I didn't think about that. So now I get it.
Yeah, and it's inexpensive to fly to do these little hops over there.
Yeah.
But here, we're kind of trapped in this. So the fact that Grace did this really speaks to the type of person she was, setting out on this grand adventure to travel the world. She was going to spend a year doing this. And the problem arises, though, when you're a stranger in a strange land, you don't know who's out there waiting. And you can place yourself in some very, very difficult situations. I can't imagine what her parents were having to deal with, particularly if you have a child that is missing, that they have come off of your radar, and you are literally thousands upon thousands of miles away from them, and there is nothing you can do to try to track her down or save her or provide for her. You're at the mercy of the authorities in that particular country, and that's what they were dealing with.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Millane.
Redefining this sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
The one thing you can say about New Zealand, other than it is apparently a lovely place with lovely people, very beautiful country, is that once you get out of places like Christchurch and Auckland, you're out in the wilderness at that point in time. A lot of undeveloped areas out there, wild sometimes equals beauty. And it's a short trip to really getting lost, I think, which is very attractive, I think, in a place like that, and just to kind of explore the countryside and see how gorgeous it is. But here, when you're talking about a case like this where you have a foreigner that has come into a place that she is not familiar with, and they're around an individual who is aware of their surroundings and where you can go, she's at a distinct disadvantage.
Oh boy.
However, here's the thing I would say: the perpetrator in this case was not fully aware of his surroundings, because Dave, I got to tell you, brother, out of the cases that we cover, I don't know that I have seen a case where the movements of one individual are documented by so much videography, including one of the most chilling things that I think that we could ever bear witness to, and that is him stepping onto an elevator with no grace, but a suitcase in his hand. And it just, it goes from bad to worse at that point in time.
When I was earlier in talking about the timeline that night because I wanted to point out that in a lot of communities like that, they have CCTV cameras all over Great Britain, New Zealand, apparently.
Yeah, they do.
Things that I'm not aware of,
You're being observed. Yeah.
Right.
And everywhere you go.
In the U.S., it's like that in some urban areas. But for the most part, if it's, a lot of times it's Ring doorbell cameras that we hear about. But when we do stories overseas, it's oftentimes CCTV cameras. And you can follow, in this case, document their date that night and where they were
from beginning to end. And then you throw in this other element, which has tremendous forensic value, is the text that were going out, and then anything that's contained on that Tinder app as well. Right. But go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step on you.
No, that's what I was going to ask you, because now, we know that, as we mentioned, Grace had spent 6 weeks in South America. She was on this 1 year gap year backpack around the world trip, which is just gutsy as all get out. Not because she's a woman, but because she's doing it by herself and planning. It's not an easy thing to do. Even I wouldn't encourage anybody to go on a trip by themselves ever, but that's just me. In this case, she gets there and she's planning. She had all planned out. She was spending 2 weeks in New Zealand. She had spent 6 weeks in South America. She's got 2 weeks here. She's backpacking and doing whatever. And I love it. I love it. But her plan of meeting up with Kempson, and as we detailed the timeline of their date all the way back to the hotel, and from what I understand, our last pictures of her alive was the night before her, it's December 1st in the evening, and they get off they go into his room, and that's it. We do not see Grace Millane alive after she turns 22 years old on December 2nd.
Yeah, and let me kind of describe this guy for you. When you see him, one of the things that New Zealand is known for, I think they're called the All Blacks is the name of it. Their national rugby team, they are renowned. This guy, when you see him, Dave, I don't know if you've ever been around a rugby player. This guy looks like he could play rugby. Now, as it turns out, he had played on some kind of national softball team or something like this. This guy is a hulking mass. And when you see Grace, she's tiny. I mean, she's not like this big, robust young lady. She is very tiny. This guy, when you see, there's actually CCTV footage riding up what they refer to as the lift. Of course, that's the elevator. This young lady has got an expression on her face that is just joy. You can see her. She has very soft appearance about her. Like she's happy, she's contented, but she's standing next to this guy, Dave. He looks like he's got like a 52-inch chest, broad shoulders, really a big man. And they're riding up this elevator together. And this is essentially the last few moments that you see her. And then it comes to this horrific end in that hotel room. And it was so horrific, Dave, that he felt compelled to go and rent a carpet cleaner. Just think about that. He had left this apartment / hotel room that he's staying in. He bought a large suitcase, bought cleaning supplies, all these sorts of things, and he comes back to make off with her body. And we can only surmise that when you see him exiting this elevator, it's a silver plastic suitcase that's probably the biggest one that you could purchase, and you know for a fact that she's folded up in there, Dave.
Right.
And the thing about it is he did this. You know how I talked about how there were, he was engaged in watching pornography and all these sorts of things while she lay dead in the room. Here's some of the other things that he searched out while she's there. Now they know this for a fact that he had searched out. This is like at 1:29 to 6 a.m.
And this is after there's always a question mark of when a person dies. And I have to ask you, Joe, can you identify, based on what you know right now, he's doing searches at 1:29. Is Grace already dead?
Yes.
So he kills her less than an hour and 29 minutes into December the 2nd. Now, we don't know when she died, but could you determine, based on knowing they got back to the hotel at such and such time, we see them getting off the hotel elevator.
Yes.
And then the time that he's on searching porn, you can determine it.
Yeah, because they had, they essentially entered back the place. The place that he's staying at is called City Life Auckland, and they literally just essentially walk across the lanes of the adjacent road, and they're at this place. And so when he's going up there, this is what I believe. I think that he had identified her as somebody that he wanted to engage in this sexual behavior with. He planned on her not leaving that room, that he was going to indulge in this fantasy that he had worked out in his mind.
Wow.
I found it, very interesting that at his trial, I hate this damn term, Dave. I really do. It's so dismissive. The term is called misadventure.
Oh, I hate that too.
The defense used that term, that this was just a sexual misadventure, that it's rough sex and it's just a misadventure. Misadventure to me means that you've made some type of mistake, and that it can be that there's some kind of justification for it. But when you see the kind of planning that he had gone through, and that he had identified her, she met something within his mind, within this dreamscape that he has, and he's acting out a fantasy with her. And it's absolutely brutal what he had done, because as she lay there deceased in this room, Dave, he searched out things like rigor mortis, and I think I know why he did that. He's trying to determine if the level of rigidity in her body, is he going to be able to fold her to get, now just let your teeth sink into this, is he going to be able to fold her and manipulate her body to get her body into this suitcase? Now, how horrific is that? It's not like he's searching out livor mortis or postmortem lividity or algor mortis, which is body temperature. No. He's looking for rigidity. He wants to try to understand, can he manipulate her arms, her waist, her knees to fold her over, to fit her into this suitcase? That's what he's trying to understand. He's also searching out terms, Dave, like hot as fire. How hot do you need a fire in order to dispose of the body? And you couple that with these scavenger animals that he's looking for, specifically birds. What type of birds are in this particular area that if I left her out, I guess exposed, that they would come and diminish her body out there? That's where this guy's mind is, Dave. The only saving grace here, I would say, that could lend some credence to what the defense has opined in his case, was that he hadn't bought these things beforehand. And as a matter of fact, he didn't even have a shovel in his possession. But this is so key here. He actually searched out something else, Dave. He searched out a location to get rid of her body. The place is called the Waitakere Range. And if you're looking on a map of Auckland, which Auckland actually occupies, they have two islands in New Zealand. You have North Island, South Island. And if you go to the west of Auckland, there is this wilderness range out there, the Waitakere Range, where there's all kinds of wildlife. It's national parks out there. He's looking for a place to put as much distance between himself and her body. But what he's not counting on, I think, is the fact that everywhere he's going, he's leaving this electronic, these electronic
Footprints.
little footprints behind him. In her case, and it's very damning evidence.
The part about all of this that drives me beyond, you mentioned misadventure, and the fact that Jesse Kempson preyed upon Grace Millane. He knew that she was backpacking alone across she had 2 weeks in New Zealand. He's from there, and he zeroes in on her, and then he plays hardball to get her to agree to go out for drinks. She didn't have any plans. He talks her into it, and they meet up, and the last night of her life begins with meeting up with Jesse Kempson, who, based on what transpires between the time that they get back to the hotel and the time that we know he's looking at porn at 1:29 a.m., he was able to do whatever he wanted to her and kill her. Now, can you tell, did he use a garrote of some type to strangle her? Did he use his hands? How did Jesse Kempson kill Grace Millane?
Well, it was actually he throttled her to death, Dave, with his hands. And again, that's not surprising in a case like this, because there's something, the tactile nature of an attack like this, where you can, as horrible as this is, but I need to go ahead and lay this out to everyone listening.
I don't quite understand what throttle means either.
Well, throttling is you're wrapping your hands around their throat. Okay. Just like and you can do it either from the rear or from the front. And so when you wrap your hands around someone's neck, it intensifies this sexual experience, right? Because it's flesh on flesh. It's flesh on flesh. You have this sensation of their warm skin beneath your fingertips, and you are literally depriving them of their life. The pathologist, and they were able to go to the range, this mountain range, and begin to recover her remains out there. They recovered her in very, very short order. And it's not like she lay out in the wilderness in a suitcase for months and months and months. It was literally within days that they had recovered her. When the pathologist actually examined her body, Dave, this is kind of an interesting little aside. The pathologist saw evidence of restraint. And when I say restraint, I'm not talking like tying somebody down. There were bruises on her body that gave the indication that there was tremendous amount of pressure put on these peripheral areas, like on the arms or the shoulders, perhaps with his knees, where he is pressing down on her and leaving these big contusions on her as he's wrapping his hands around her throat to choke her to death. I think the bold nature of all of this is that his actions after, it's almost like he's in some kind of sexual frenzy. I've often thought about when people work themselves up under these circumstances, it's almost like a feeding frenzy with sharks. Have you ever seen those images of sharks rolling over the water? Right. Because, you had rightly mentioned that he had this other Tinder date. We had mentioned he's looking at porn. He's hyperstimulated at this point in time. and he's going on to the next thing to try to maintain that dopamine high or whatever it is that he's got going on in his brain. And the boldness of somebody to purchase a suitcase and to rent a carpet cleaning machine, which he later returned after he utilized this thing, and then to hire a car, Dave, to transport her body in. You place the suitcase in the trunk or in the boot, as they say,
right,
and you transport her body out there, stopping along the way, by the way, to purchase a shovel.
Because he didn't even have that. He didn't have what he needed to dispose of her body, but he had the ability to strangle her in the hotel room. Do we know if he was? I hate to ask this, but I'm going to, because I know that he took pictures of her naked.
Yes,
and I am going to assume that she was dead when he took the pictures. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. He took pictures of her to remember what he had done, so that he could go back and relive the moment. Is all I can think. But are you able to determine if he had sex with her after she was dead? Was he watching porn to reinvigorate himself to attack her while she was dead?
Quite possibly. And I don't, in the court record, there's not a lot of data contained in there relative to the sexual assault, or if it was post-mortem or ante-mortem, but it still goes to this thread that runs through the entire thing, that this is a purely sexually motivated crime that winds up in her death. And here's one other thing. She had drank so much alcohol, when they were out, when they were getting to know one another and they're talking, all this sort of things. The legal limit was, she had blown through that already. Mm-hmm. So, you're really wondering, if they're in the bar, or is he saying, well, why don't we do some shots? Maybe he's got her doing shots so that he's going to get her more pliable to whatever it is that he wants to do. This person had planned this thing out. It's not highly planned, but there is a plan here to do what he's going to do. And again, while he is on this high and she's deceased, he's still trying to achieve the satisfaction through either, documenting what he had done. He's going to go back and fantasize over this. It really gives you pause to wonder if there were others, because, you got people that engage in this behavior. They take photographs of this horrible activity that they're engaged in. And one of the things they love to do, Dave, is to go back and review. And we've talked about all these serial killers that are out there, over the years that have taken trophies, and they do take pictures as well. There's any number of these people that take pictures of their victims in a deceased state, and they go back and they relive this for them. Was he essentially apprehended on the front end of maybe a career as a serial perpetrator, or is this something that he had been engaged in before? I do know this, though. This person is now off the streets. He is serving a mandatory life sentence. But the one thing I do know is that this young lady's life, who she was living it to the fullest, traveling about the world, was snuffed out by a total and complete stranger. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
This February, Aldous Hodge returns as Alex Cross, your favorite detective on television, for Season 2 of the hit show Cross, premiering February 11th exclusively on Prime Video. Fresh off his capture of the infamous serial killer The Fanboy, Cross teams up with the FBI to hunt down a vigilante serial killer targeting corrupt billionaires. As the case unfolds, Cross navigates a moral crossroads where the lines between justice and vengeance are blurred. Catch Season 2 of Cross, with new episodes dropping weekly starting February 11th, only on Prime Video.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.